Welcome to the Thought Leadership Forum Journal, the audio-video podcast of the Thought Leadership Forum, launched as far back as 2005, incorporated in 2008. It is essentially an awareness enhancement initiative, apolitical, devoid of political bias or private vested interest. And this podcast series will focus on a variety of areas. But today, we are privileged to have in the studio Heshana Kuruppu, the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, better known today as CS Sri Lanka. Welcome to the TLF Journal, Heshana.
Thank you very much, and it's a privilege to have this discussion with you. I'm sure it's going to be a new experience to have this discussion with one of our illustrious past presidents.
Well, thanks for that, Heshana. Heshana, I thought, given that you and I are both in the profession, I thought we will focus on matters of professional interest. I like to start by reminding ourselves, of course, all of you are doing an excellent job to celebrate the 65th anniversary.
Thank you.
And I admire the way you all are doing it. And as a past president, I feel proud of all of you. I want to focus on the professionalism in practice, audit quality, auditor independence, and ethics. These are not four areas actually, but we expect professionalism in practice. And professionalism is a function also of the independence of the auditor. And also the ethics of the institute, the rules and regulations it follow, all of those bring to bear upon this professionalism that I like to title it as. Would you like to share with us your views, in particular for the benefit of a wider audience?
Okay, so let me start. I think what you said, the professionalism and the how we conduct ourselves comes with the governance structure first. So let me explain the governance structure of the institute. So we are set up by Act of Parliament back 65, as you rightly said, 65 years back. So this act stipulates the areas that we need to focus our objectives as well as the governance-related activities, including disciplinary matters. Same way, there is governance structure that is including council. Council has 16 members. Some are appointed by members, some are elected by members, and there's another set of members appointed by the minister in charge. At this moment, the minister in charge is the finance minister. So under that governance structure of the council, we have committee structure. So one of such committee is the ethics committee. Ethics committee, as per our act, is the investigating committee, which looks into the affairs relating to the conduct of our members. That is also again an independent committee, and then the members are represented by both members of the institute as well as non-members, including a few lawyers are there as the committee members. So, and there is a stipulated process relating to answering your specific question, whether it's a member in practice or whether member in a business. If there are ethical matters relating to a particular member, there's a process stipulated, and that process continues if there is a complaint received. So that's the kind of approach we adopt to ensure we have this governance structure in place and ensure our members abide by the code of conduct and ethics.
It's interesting, Heshana, you touched on, as you quite rightly said, the process, the methodology followed is legally enabled by the Act, as you quite rightly said. And there's a council, there is an investigation or ethics committee, and the complaints come in, anybody can complain, and that is evaluated by the ethics committee, referred to the council, and so on. But another interesting thing you mentioned is, if you go back in time, we didn't have that outside input. And I think many years ago, when we invited lawyers, well-established lawyers.
And retired judges even.
Yes, of course. And who serve on our committee. So that we are also kept on our toes. We can't have any subjective bias towards a member. So the presence of those persons, I think it is not known very much. But I think I'm quite happy that we have a good balance of members in practice, members in industry, members in the public sector, private sector, as well as non-members, particularly the lawyers. So that's fine. Arising out of that, what I also, when you say audit quality, there will be complaints connected with professional misconduct or professional negligence. That's the limited parameter of the ethics code. But arising from that, I would like to ask you, there is a perception that the auditor's independence may be impaired if certain issues are not addressed by those who conduct the audit. Now, there is a perception that we are self-regulated. Over the years, I think that self-regulation aspect was brought about in many ways. But I think we were the first to establish a body, a regulatory body of accounting and auditing standards. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I think this is in 1995. Sri Lanka Accounting and Auditing Standard Act was enacted, and in that act, there's a specific body established, Sri Lanka Accounting and Auditing Standard Monitoring Board. So this act again stipulate the issuance and promulgation of accounting standards have been delegated to Sri Lanka Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, both accounting and auditing standards. Same way, the Act empowers Sri Lanka Accounting and Auditing Standard Monitoring Board to see specific business enterprises, because there's a definition of specified business enterprises, whether those specified business enterprises are adapting the reporting standards, that is accounting standard. The same way, they ensure the auditors are following the standard issued by Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka when they are conducting their audits. So the SLAASMB is empowered to monitor compliance with accounting standard as well as auditing standard. So it's not self-regulated in a way. SLAASMB has that power through Accounting and Auditing Standard Act. So we see them reviewing because I think they have criteria set based on the risk assessment of each of the specified business enterprise. They conduct detailed reviews, and if they are not happy, then they even go into auditors and review auditors' file. And if they find any misalignment or non-compliance, so then they go into different actions, including legal actions. So that's the kind of power they have.
So interesting, Heshana, that given that President Trump of the USA is back in his seat, somewhere in 2020 during his last term, he spoke of taking the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board and eliminating some $590 to $600 million, the cost cut, and park it in the SEC. Now, I think I wrote an article about that saying it's regressive.
Yeah.
As you said, now, we can't be faulted for being self-regulated, because I referred to audit quality at the beginning, and that audit quality, the quality of accounting and auditing standards implementation or compliance therewith, is vetted by the Sri Lanka Accounting and Auditing Standards Monitoring Board, and that monitoring board has people from the Chambers of Commerce, from the Central Bank, and I think from the time of its inception, I think we have had a Deputy Governor of the Central Bank as the chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Wijesinha was there, and even now, right?
So even now, Ms. Dowlagala.
Right. So that is a clear indication that we are not self-regulated. Of course, there is a perception that there is dominance of the Sri Lanka Accounting and Auditing Standards Monitoring Board by our professional members, by our members of our profession. Now, I had a thought long time ago, even when I was involved in the SEC, that we should amend the Act. And there were certain amendments considered. What are those?
There is a process at the moment. I think it has reached the last leg of finalization.
Okay.
So we will very soon see a new Act coming to play.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm very happy to hear that. Again,
So one more point I would like to highlight is relating to auditors' quality. There's an auditing standard that was introduced and effective from 1st January 2025, that is SLAASMB 1, Sri Lanka Standard of Quality Management. So now all the audit firms are supposed to follow SLAASMB 1. And CA Sri Lanka also will start having the review mechanism relating to SLAASMB 1 from 2026.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful. During my time, I recall trying to initiate what I called a institute-led practice review committee. That is, while the monitoring board was already in existence, to have a balance of people from small and medium practitioners and all that.
Self-declaration and self-review.
Because the big firms, Heshana, having been to 3 of the 4, now it's 5 more maybe. I recall the time people would come, when I was working overseas, the US officers would come and take a look at the files, the Bahamas. So I think quite a few people from England used to come at one time.
Exactly. So they have the very rigorous file review process in place.
Exactly. So if you're part of a network, and we encourage all our firms to aspire to that, there is several layers of possible regulation.
Exactly. I think it's important for our own profession to have this self-review as well as review by independent parties to ensure that the world as well, that we are having a very transparent process in place and ensure we are abiding by these rules and regulations. So I think I take this opportunity to convey our members as well to support CS Sri Lanka in this initiative by establishing the quality review mechanisms within
Absolutely. Not to be defensive, not to be offensive, but to be progressive.
Definitely, yes.
And that's the way of the future.
Because if you take now even South Asian countries, as you rightly said, we started this process back in 2015-16 as well, but due to various reasons, we had to halt it. Now, if you take Nepal, Bangladesh, India, they have gone to next level, and some actually countries are doing peer reviews now. So we are a bit behind, but we want to do a fast track and see how we catch up.
Yes, I'm sure we'll get there. A connected thought is, I think, the PCAOB of the USA came about as recently as after the global financial crisis, after the Dodd-Frank Act, and we were there perhaps a decade before. Now, SLAASMB, to my mind, is a feed also for other regulators. I'm a strong believer in a market economy, but a market economy with desirable and effective, up-to-date and fair and just regulation.
And monitoring.
Yes. So if the central bank is doing on-site and off-site reviews of banks, and if the capital market, SEC, which you're on ex officio, and that's interesting how our members play roles in other regulators as well. If I just mention those two and perhaps the Insurance Regulatory Commission, I think the SLAASMB's work can be a very potent feeder for those regulators. So I wish you well in your amendments to SLAASMB to ensure that, the perception that we are self-regulated or the perception that nobody chooks at audit quality will gradually be taken away. And people will have more confidence in Sri Lanka's accounting and auditing standards.
Definitely, yes.
I want to also touch on the independence or the perceived impairment of independence. There has been a lot of discussion about this. Do you, as president of the institute, believe that partners of professional services firms should not serve as directors of listed entities? I will give you my view, but
while
being partners of firms, do you think it is proper to serve on the boards of listed entities, banks and non-banks?
It's a difficult question to answer. No, I think what matters is, yes, you can tick and say, I am independent, but most important point is whether you are independent, whether you have my independence of your mind. So it's up to the individual to ensure when you are taking up that role, whether you are playing the independent role and not compromising your other role as auditor. So I think that's the view I take here. Otherwise, if you start having a regulation and say you can't, because the country also needs professionals contributing to the corporate sector. So and then we have kind of shortage of competent professionals as well. So it's a balance that we have to make sure, and it lies on the individual, I believe, how you act.
No, that's an interesting question, and I think this requires maybe a further in-depth discussion. I'm going to share with you certain anecdotes. I remember during the time I was a partner of PricewaterhouseCoopers, we could not have served on the board of any listed entity. And why I would extend that to SBE is because SLAASMB addresses listed entities, SBEs which are not listed. Now take for example of a partner of audit firm, while practicing as a partner of that firm, serving on the board of a bank. With no offense to anybody, in my view, that is certainly not proper, because a bank can have a variety of borrowing clientele, and any one of them or several of them can be your audit client. So in this question of independence, it's also, I think, Heshana, about
just to get a clarification.
Real.
Yeah, so if you know that and you declare it, and you avoid being part of that discussion, so don't you think that can at least...
See, the issue is there will be...
I'm not taking any side. I'm trying to see how the...
That's a tough one. In my view, let me make bold to say that I think partners of audit firms, particularly audit firms, I'm not talking about, they should not serve on boards of banks to begin with. Problem with the listed entities is that these listed entities have connections with related party transactions and all that. But moving on, I will leave it to you to discuss with your council and come up with some kind of policy, because then that will enhance the credibility of the CS Sri Lanka. Leveraging the core discipline of accountants, I find that while we are perceived as auditors or accountants, as partners of firms or as finance directors, I believe that the core discipline of accounting I think I said this even in my induction many years ago, can be leveraged for people to perform a variety of roles in the public sector, in regulation, central banks, in international organizations, and all of that. So what are your views on that?
I 100% agree. I think the sound base you get as a budding accountant, and when you follow that program for 3 years or 4 years period, including the practical training that you go through, definitely you become all-rounder. And when you join an organization as an accountant, or when you continue as an auditor, so you I think mostly when you are in the industry also, you get that 360-degree view.
Right.
So with that, you are trained to look at the problem holistically, as well as analyze things differently, because you see that total picture. I don't think any other person in an organization would see that total picture.
Sure.
Other than the silo that you are working. So that helps them to be, when you go up the ladder, take up, I'm telling this for especially the young accountants or young minds, those who are trying to follow the accountancy as a profession, because there is this myth that these technologies like AI and robotic process automation is going to take over accountants' role. So my view is always that you are not losing your job to AI, but you are losing your job to a person who knows AI. So it's rather an enabler, not a substitute for your role. So as you rightly said, we have seen many examples even in our profession. Mr. Riaz Mehula has played a key role at IFAC. Arjuna Herat, all past presidents, if you remember, I think he was the committee chair of Professional Accountancy Organization Development Committee. Sure. Currently, recently, Manil Wijesinha was appointed as a advisory member of IFRS Foundation.
Exactly.
So there are many, and you yourself was CAPA president some time back, and first Sri Lankan to hold that position. So I think there are many examples, and if you look at even around 30% of our members are working overseas, and some are holding very totally different positions, not in finance and accounting.
You're right. Actually, some of us members have worked in the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, United Nations, UNDP. So I think it is not necessarily finance and accounting alone, but just take, for example, now you're a commissioner of the SEC. It's about capital market regulation. Yeah. I served as chairman of the SEC, and I find that the core discipline of accounting and auditing and that exposure we've had can be leveraged to have kind of good balance.
Definitely, yes.
Between capital market regulation and capital market development. Yeah. Because those two go hand in hand. I want to also ask you, there is a perception that if you are promoted from where you are as a finance director, let us say to a member on the main board of a company, or you're brought in as an independent director, sometimes there is reluctance on the part of people to voice their opinion, even to swim against the tide when a bad project is being conceived. And we often think that the public sector has bad projects, the private sector does not have bad projects. And I think that's an unfair statement. If you've worked in both the public and private sector. A good example I can give is that even if you go back 2.5 decades, even companies like John Keel's needed to strengthen the due diligence that they perform on a concept, on a feasibility study, on project promoters, and so on. Rather than commenting on the private sector, the public sector, the due diligence is perceived to be, and in reality also, very poor. We have had a large number of bad projects, and that has been not because the government didn't have people to evaluate it. The various phases where a member of our profession could very well have made an impact on concept evaluation and all that. The relevance of that to me is that if you go back in time, I think the State Fertilizer Corporation was closed down because Mr. Ronnie DeMel complained that the project was very badly conceived.
Okay.
There are lots of private sector companies also who have bad projects. Right. In today's context, when we are talking about a large number of bad projects created by borrowings at commercial rates, and we have white elephants. So something that I would like to invite you as the CA Sri Lanka president, the Thought Leadership Forum, which I have for a limited range of activities, to do some research on, if you go back in time, we had a 7%, 8% economic growth rate. China had economic growth rates of double digits. But today we know both China and Sri Lanka have a lot of white elephants. I've raised this question in the presence of Ricardo Hausman of Harvard And his point was that China has a major GDP, so the white elephants don't have a huge impact. But we have a situation where maybe the harbors we created recently, the airports, the cricket stadium, and a host of other projects which don't generate the revenue. And if we adopt the private sector approach of impairing the carrying value, we've never impaired anything. So if you impair a carrying value, it will actually impact the economic growth rate. Any thoughts?
So I'll answer it in two forms. So first one about the bad evaluation or project evaluation. I think this is a staggering number that we heard from Accountants Association of Public Sector. So they sent us a letter 3-4 months back. That letter carried some data relating to the public sector accounting service. As per them, there are around 1,200 public sector accountants. Out of that, only 36 are professionally qualified. And they are accounting for around 5 trillion now. As per the budget, I think it's going to be 7 trillion this year expenditure. I don't think majority of our even SBs have that kind of expenditure budget. But I'm not saying that you need to be a qualified, professionally qualified accountant for you to do the government sector accounting, because they are also recruiting people who have in degrees and other qualifications. But only thing is that required competency for a project evaluation is different. That's what I feel we need to see how we professionalize the public sector accounting service as well and get more professionally qualified people. The problem, I think, is we all know the perks and benefits offered. So when you look at a newly qualified accountant, they prefer private sector as against the public sector.
Sure.
To answer your second question, whether there are white elephants created and borrowed funds. So this is the debate I think we were having for several years, including the economic turmoil that we encountered in 2022. My thinking is, yes, you may have to go back and adjust the growth figures. On the other hand, don't you think that now we are looking at our GDP and ratio is GDP versus debt as a sustainability measure. Using these debts, I'm not saying the total debt is used for the asset. There would have been different ways of payments, but there is some asset created. Don't you think that we have to consider asset value that we have built also using these debts when you take a call? That's I think another discussion, because I don't think we book the total assets in the government balance sheet.
No, there are two aspects here. My point is, in the absence of a thoroughness or robustness in evaluating a concept, feasibility studies, due diligence, both of the project itself as well as the promoters to the project, their capacities. Now, I don't want to mention names, but there are a large number of projects in this country which have become white elephants, even in Colombo. And I'm not talking about the public sector, I'm talking about private sector, I'm talking about foreign private sector. There has to be a thoroughness of the process of project evaluation. The absence of that, my point is, leads to bad projects coming into being.
Okay.
And given that the private sector in Sri Lanka has now reached a level, I think, of strong, a very good, admirable level of resilience plus thoroughness, the public sector can't be so different. My point is, the absence of these, the proper project evaluation has led to the creation of assets which are not generating enough money.
Right, get it.
Now, in the private sector, you would use your international financial reporting standards and impair it.
Yeah.
That alone brings a discipline. But in the public sector so far, since we don't even adopt accrual accounting and a proper way of accounting, on the one hand, there is a loss that is not provided for. But you're absolutely right. On the other hand, there is a richness. I've gone public on this as well, if I may share with you. The richness of the resources of this country are not on the balance sheet of the nation. So I think that again might be a nice project for us to do. I'm not talking about mineral resources and all that.
That's right. So one point I would like to add is, so there's a key legislature that came in 2023, Public Finance Management Act.
Right.
So that has several provisions, including, as I remember, investment committee for the evaluation of public investments.
Okay.
So that is the mandate is to ensure that you have this same idea that you propose, proper evaluation of project before you go ahead with the project, as well as post-evaluation, post-implementation evaluation.
Right.
And the same act provides for implementation of accrual-based accounting and adoption of international public sector accounting standard.
Right.
So I think it's a very key piece of legislation, in my view, that will uplift the transparency of public sector accounting. Only thing is, we'll have to see how we execute it. Because public sector has several challenges when you start doing accrual accounting. And CS Sri Lanka is actually extending our support to the public sector as well.
Two things out of this. One is that when you mention the large numbers of less than experienced or less than qualified professionals in the financial management area, in the public sector across the island, that is a concern. I think that's an excellent point you raised. But this brings me, I had the privilege of being invited by the Asian Development Bank to conduct a study in Armenia, where they focused on strengthening public financial management professionals. And what I did there was that I suggested interventions from the Asian Development Bank to capacity build and to have public sector professionals linked with institutes. So I think you're already on the right track.
Yeah.
There's a major role, I think. I think these are areas, Heshana, where I believe that the World Bank and the ADB and the USAID and the JICA, to name only a few, there is a lot of money that may not necessarily be productively deployed. But here is an area in association with our institute.
Sure, definitely.
Maybe you can even put up a proposal to strengthen public financial management professionals in Sri Lanka.
I think I would like to add 2 points there. So 2015, we introduced Chartered Public Finance Accountants qualification. Right. So at this moment, if someone does first 2 levels of CA, that is corporate level and business level, first 2 levels, and follow 12 subjects, they have to follow 4 specific subjects relating to public sector accounting, and they get the Certified Public Accountants qualification, Chartered Public Account. The challenge is, and they can get the membership of SIPFA, London.
Okay.
The challenge at this moment is, so for last 10 years, you have not been able to get this professional qualification listed in the public service minutes.
Oh, I see.
So because of that, they don't have any encouragement or motivation to follow, because they don't get recognition when they apply for promotions and other salary increases. So that's a challenge. But we are now trying to see with the new government and the new ministers to see how we get this qualification due recognition. The second is, first of its kind, we introduced MBA in Public Finance Management.
Okay.
So that was introduced in 2023. The first batch we are now enrolling, and the course will commence in March this year. So that is dedicated for public sector capacity building.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that's to be applauded.
Thank you.
I think we may have run out of a little time, but still, I would like to touch on 1 or 2 other areas that can be discussed perhaps at another session like this. State-owned enterprise reforms have been discussed for the last 3 decades that I know of, right? And all of what we're talking about here is relevant to what I call restructure and reposition SOEs. Privatization may not be the panacea of all ills, but I think in the absence of strong public financial management professionals, and the due diligences and all of that, and proper audits and checks and monitoring mechanisms, I don't think that we can, I don't like to use the word reform, but restructure and reposition the state-owned enterprises. Heshana, just to ask you, you have been, I'm sure, at many budget fora. Does the budget refer to SOE reforms? I don't think I saw it.
I think there was a particular section which covers a previously appointed committee under the Secretary to the Prime Minister to look into, I think, selected public sector organizations to decide whether those needs to be closed down, amalgamated, merged, or completely eliminated from the process. I think that there is a study happening under a committee appointed.
I think you're right. You jogged my memory. I think the Deputy Minister of Finance referred to that in some fora as well.
Yeah.
Right, that will be good.
I'm not quite sure whether the previous committee Suresh Shah was heading is continuing, or whether that's the same committee, that's the same scope that is being handled by the new committee. But there's some work happening, so we are yet to see the outcome.
Yes, so it's not that they have omitted it.
No, I don't think because it's a no-brainer anyway. So you have to look into this aspect, irrespective of the political party, I think.
Absolutely. My point is that regardless of which political party is in office, I wouldn't like to see the SOEs dragging down a government that could otherwise sprint, if not, walk at least, if not sprint.
Sure.
But on that note, thank you very much, Heshana. I think there's a lot more that we can discuss at future sessions like this. But for the moment, let me thank you very much for being with us. And a thought for the listening and viewing public of the TLF Journal, we intend to bring in more people to discuss like this, as well as touch on a variety of other topics, which will strengthen, hopefully, the public policy dialogue, which is not, to my mind, strong enough in the country yet.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And indeed, this is a novel experience for me as well.
Thanks very much.